Well, 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 I said I thought that the 14 days might pass fast, and at least for me, wow, they really seem to have. Tomorrow, guys, is the day that we get to go back to the Fire Island chain. Today is the last day of waiting. Now, just before we run into that, I thought I'd help ease you over with a little bit of news, because more stuff has happened. In fact, there's been another video about the Fire Island chain since my deconstruction of the original trailer, and it's kind of a behind the scenes from Guild Wars 2, as well as actually quite a lot of other stuff, including some things on the PvP side. So today, just to help us get through till tomorrow, when the patch will be maybe even late in the day, who knows, I thought I'd talk to you guys about some of this additional stuff. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the making of video. The making of video does actually include, I believe, a lot more footage than the trailer itself did. It's the same format we saw with some of their raid making of videos before individual wings came out, where you see a little bit of the new gameplay, the new content, the new whatever, and then they'll cut to the devs talking about some of their goals, ambitions, and so on. Now, one thing that I do find very, very interesting about this trailer, probably the coolest thing, and you've already seen it in the title, is the fact that there are green destroyers on display for just a couple of frames in the trailer. Green destroyers. So here's a screenshot of it here for you guys on screen right now. Why on earth this could have happened, I don't know, but I'll take a shot at it. Now, I've heard that some different elements or metals can burn green. So someone mentioned this on Reddit. They said that copper, boron, iron, thallium, and tungsten all can burn green. So maybe this is the idea that Primordus, who molds his minions and gets them out of the ground, is actually getting them from, you know, some different alloys or metals or things in various places, and we get different kinds of destroyers from it. You know, ideally, if we're going into Primordus storylines, I would say I'd rather just see new varieties entirely. Think about like the Chaos Discs and some of those badass menacing destroyer versions from Guild Wars 1, as well as, of course, totally new badass and interesting ones. That'll be very cool, not necessarily just green colorations. I also kind of feel like what Primordus really deserves is a badass champion encounter beyond just, like, say, the Mega Destroyer that we get to fight in Mount Maelstrom. He needs something that feels on par with the Shatterer, with Tequatl, and maybe one day, even if they get an update, Jormag too. But Jormag maybe is already complicated enough that the devs will never want to do that. And maybe the Fire Island chain will, in fact, do something like that with its meta events. But the thing is, you'd think they'd show it in the trailers, right? I mean, the first trailer that we got showed that big destroyer, and you guys, I think, quite correctly pointed out it was a copy of the Mega Destroyer. So, again, not a new variant. We'll see, right? Like, I'm still very excited about exploring this map. It's going to feel like a classic vanilla, maybe even, Guild Wars map, just with those added Heart of Thorns things on top because of the addition of the hearts there. That was something that was clarified a little further as well in this behind the scenes, by the way. One of the developers said that, look, one of the big goals for this map was exploration, and hearts fit into that very well. That's kind of a curious comment from me, because I think that exploration has probably been a big goal for every map they've ever put in, right? Unless we're talking about incredibly linear experiences and small instance things. So, sure, you're going with exploration, but why hearts now is what I'm curious about. That's not that I'm salty about hearts, by the way. Day by day, as it comes closer, I'm getting more and more curious and more excited about how these are going to change up the game. And I do have fond memories, as I showed hopefully quite clearly recently, for those initial early leveling experiences where hearts were around. Hearts, I don't think, are super inherently flawed. They just have some slight issues and are very repetitive. So if the devs have got plenty of time to make entirely new hearts dedicated for one region, you know, there's no reason that these hearts have to necessarily feel boring and exactly the same as all the cookie cutter ones that we did way back at launch. So yeah, there you go. That's green destroyers. There's other things that could have caused it. It could just be a sign that they're stronger, obviously, though you'd think they'd follow the idea of, like, fire intensities, right? And maybe go to blue destroyers or something. Though blue fire's obviously been done a lot in Guild Wars already. There's magic that could have caused it, or I suppose any other number of things. I'll talk to you guys about it once the patch is actually out. The other thing that the trailer really talks a lot about are the skulls. I said on that original trailer, before the behind the scenes came out, that there seemed to be a bit of a focus on the skulls. And I was wondering, therefore, if we were going to get additional lore based further, maybe on what we got in the official prophecies manuscripts, as I later learned about. But the behind the scenes takes it up to 11, man. They're talking about the skulls constantly. I guess they're just proud of these very metal, as they describe them, skulls that they've got all around the landscape. Again, it might not even mean that much for the story in the end. They are pretty cool, and we do get so many more shots of them now, spewing their lava all over the place. And yeah, there's lots of different variants of them too. It is quite nice. You know, I remembered them being there in the Fire Island chain, but it wasn't until just this week I went back to Guild Wars 1 and replayed the Fire Island chain back there and produced those videos for you guys. It wasn't until I did that I realized how many there were. There weren't just skulls around. There were skulls everywhere. And so I don't actually blame them or question the fact that the behind the scenes seems to focus on them so goddamn much. The other final thing that I really took away from the behind the scenes was footage of the new mastery. So the devs kind of said that it was quite difficult making a new mastery, I think, or it was a challenge to make a new mastery for the Fire Island chain to make it fitting with the theme here. Supposedly a lot of the other masteries from Heart of Thorns are still relevant. There's apparently jumping mushrooms and things like that on the Fire Island chain. Let's not question, I guess, why mushrooms are around, because I think that idea of a fertile Fire Island chain is actually going to be quite a big thing for them. But we get to see footage of the new mastery, okay? And it rockets you through the sky, just like we speculated, at enormous distances. You guys remember early in the year where they put gliding into core Tyria and they added those jump pads around? They like filtered them throughout the world, and these are jump pads that take you absolutely miles. Well, this is way more than even that. It's kind of cool to see ArenaNet's progression there. You kind of start with Tequatl and they come up with this cool idea of jump pads. Then you have a couple of other like Living World Season 1 patches where we have kind of jumpy based movements, but they don't go too crazy with it. Heart of Thorns adds some ridiculous ones if you go to the right places with some jumping mushrooms. Then they do the gliding, and now this, they're just so far, and it makes everything look so pretty. I'm very curious how people who run on potatoes will do soaring through the game engine at those kinds of speeds, because it is ridiculous. And that, guys, really is the behind the scenes. Now, there probably are a few more details that you can get out of it. There's a link in the description if you want to check out the full thing for yourself. But basically, the footage that will be rolling in the background for a lot of this video here will be the good stuff. Okay, so let's move on. What else has happened? Not too much, but a few things I did want to point out to you guys. Number one is actually another trailer. It's for the PvP side of things, but I'm quite into the PvP side of things right now, so hear me out. And there's some slightly interesting stories going on too. So you may remember that it was revealed another new map is coming for PvP. I've already given massive praise to this. I think it's incredible that the PvP side of development seems to have really found its feet, that we had not just Revenge of the Capricorn last patch, but we're getting another map this patch too. You guys should remember the crazy amount of dead maps from Tyria 3D that they'd clearly played with for PvP before, but not had the balls to put out, and now it seems that they've found those balls, and they're actually putting them out. I really wonder whether each episode's going to have a map or something, because that would be crazy for the PvPers. Anyway, so we actually got to see the map. Now, where was this, you might be wondering? That's kind of curious. We got to see it if you were watching the World Championships, which happened a little bit earlier in the week. I actually didn't stream on Friday, specifically because I didn't want to overlap with the World Championship, which I watched. It took about 5 to 6 hours, I think. It was pretty interesting. I spent most of my time, instead of wondering about the teams, to be honest, and sort of getting into the hype, wondering about the presentation of the event and wondering how things can be improved. Not in terms of like casting and stuff, but in terms of the UI and all these weird things, because I'm a stupid man that gets pre-obsessed by idiotic, small, unimportant things. But nonetheless, a lot of people that actually turned up for that stream, I do think turned up because they wanted to see a preview for the new map. ArenaNet were really smart to tie these two things together. And so right before the finals, they showed us the Coliseum. Now, I'm kind of kicking myself, guys. I'm kind of kicking myself because there was an Easter egg in Revenge of the Capricorn that hinted at this map. And I remember, okay, just before the last Living World episode came out, I did my portal with all my videos on it, and I had 2 specific areas I was looking at Raid on the Capricorn, and I'd seen this poster, and I never talked about it. So, let's rewind the clock a little bit. Remember Revenge on the Capricorn? Remember how it was kind of Lion's Arch based? Well, on some of the walls there were posters. I believe they were Evan Nashblade, Ellen Keel looking posters, and I thought they were vaguely related to those characters. It was just sort of the Mists reimagining the events that we'd experienced way back in Living World Season 1 or something along those lines. But there was new Kryta on them that you could translate, and they totally mentioned entering the battle in the Coliseum or something like that, and it went over my head. I thought, oh, that's just some cool little flavor dialogue. I didn't talk about it on any of my videos. I didn't deem it important enough, and it ended up not only being important, but it was actually an Easter egg, perhaps a small hint to the next map. So what am I talking about? Why is this important? Well, guys, because if the PvP side is genuinely getting really good at pushing out maps, you might find they already have another one in the can that they're building on, well, not ready with, but ready to be released with the next update, and they may have a name for it and stuff already, and there could be an Easter egg in the Coliseum. So keep an eye out. I don't know, man. It reminds me of some of these console shooters and on their PvP side of things where you can hide these really ridiculously awesome, well-hidden Easter eggs in them. I would be astonished if ArenaNet can start pulling that off in their own PvP little maps as time goes on. So yeah, the Coliseum itself, artistically, I don't know, I'm a little bit disappointed in. It just kind of looks like a lot of World versus World gates and things assets that they've managed to throw in there. But it is interesting in terms of some of the other assets they've got. The idea is it's a big arena and you've got this huge stadium, this crowd of people watching you. Try not to scrutinize the details of the characters in the crowd. They're not supposed to be highly detailed. They don't want to drag down your FPS in this PvP map, of course. But so as the match progresses, remember how in Revenge on the Capricorn, slowly the map started getting more and more destroyed, it was deteriorating more. Well, in this map you kind of have a similar thing, that as the map goes along, the intensity of the crowd scales and scales and scales. So it's very hard to talk about PvP maps before they come out. As not an epic PvPer myself, I'm sure that someone could do a frame-by-frame analysis of what they perceive all of the good rotations and routes and jump spots and things to be before it comes out, but I'm certainly not qualified for that kind of thing. Regardless, apparently it's very labyrinthian, it's very easy to get lost and lose perspective of where you are, and people are saying that's sort of a good thing about the map, but I wonder whether that's just because a lot of the assets look the same and you've got these big walls around you. Anyway, so that was the trailer, and an unfortunate thing happened at the World Championship, and that's that they tried to surprise us with a really cool idea, and that was a show match on the new map. They weren't just going to give us a trailer of it, which you guys are watching right now, but they were going to also have a lot of the people who'd already been kicked out of the tournament form ad hoc teams together, mix and match everyone up, and have 10 players of these star players actually playing on the new map for funsies, on any builds they liked. And that would be fun in so many ways. You get to see good players out of their element, taking on a new environment, and we get to enjoy it, and enjoy it for a reasonable amount of time too. But unfortunately, it crashed. There was a hell of a lot of vitriol thrown at this in chat when it happened. Mistakes do happen, I guess. Technical issues do come up. I'd also point out that really just because it crashed there on that day, on that small build that they had packaged up for that event, it means nothing for the state of the map itself and whether it's really going to be ready on Tuesday. Maybe I'll eat my hat and it will crash on Tuesday as well, but I think everyone's suggesting that was maybe a little bit foolish to do so. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. We were going to get a lot more footage. We didn't in the end. I hope that doesn't put ArenaNet off, because that's a very good idea. Again, having the show match, having a trailer specifically for people watching these big tournaments, trying to get those Twitch numbers up. The main problem with ArenaNet right now, I think, when it comes to getting those numbers up, is number one, some of the presentation of the gameplay, because it's a very, very hard game to present in a proper manner. I did a stream rambling about a lot of this before, but also just letting the community know when these events are happening. I didn't really do my part for it previously. I didn't talk about when the World Championships were coming up. They're trying to show you stuff in-game on loading screens, having it up there in the top right, but I still think it needs to be a little bit clearer, perhaps. So we'll see how that goes as time goes forward. Last thing to talk about with the Coliseum, by the way, is its secondary mechanic. So a couple of devs actually came on for a quick little interview about it, by the way, and they described that in this secondary mechanic, you have 2 different buffs that can spawn. One of them basically gives your team insane damage, 20% more damage for everyone on the team. That's a huge modifier, okay? And when the next person scores a kill, it instantly stomps, I believe, is what it was. I don't know, it doesn't instantly stomp. It's kind of like the Fractal Avengers, where you score a kill and a thing will get summoned to stomp your foe. That could actually be really weak, by the way, if it's just as simple as using your skill 2 to get away from, and then you're done, and it will never try again. But that's the offensive one, and the defensive one is plus 5,000 health to everyone, and the next time you go down, you get revived. So kind of a glyph of renewal in fire sort of effect, I'm guessing here. Now you might think, wow, that sounds totally OP. These buffs last 90 seconds, okay? 90 seconds, and then we sort of go back to the status quo. I'm very much looking forward to this mechanic, and specifically the damage half of the mechanic, because I feel like this could inject a little more into Conquest of what I think the scene really needs, which is a bit of on and off, a bit of flow to the matches where you feel it build to the massive team fight, then it explodes with the crazy visual effects. Everybody understands the importance of the team fight, then it wanes off a little bit, and then, you know, you get to roll back in again instead of all over the map all the time, every second, which is very hard to follow a lot of the time. And how does that mechanic help that from a spectator's perspective? Well, you know, when that comes up, the next big team fight is that bit more exciting, because say one team has the defensive buff while the other team has the offensive buff, and there's a big question as to who wins, and you know that all the numbers are so much bigger, and it's so much more important for these teams to capitalize on what they're doing at that moment. So it could be interesting. That's the Coliseum. I guess we'll see tomorrow just how it gets implemented. So those are the main big things that really happened. There were 2 other things that came from that shaman that I did want to throw in here right at the end of the video for you guys that I thought were absolutely awesome. The links are in the description if you want to check them out. Number 1 was from a little bit back. It's actually a stitched map that he did of this. Here, check this out, okay? This is really just for funsies. This doesn't mean anything about the game whatsoever, guys, but it's something I'm absolutely in love with, and really makes you think about what the game could have been like if they had gone for a very different server infrastructure, if we had gone with the very traditional MMO style, where we'd have server downtime and all this kind of stuff, where they didn't instance things off. This is what Tyria would have looked like in the human regions if there were no like loading screens between maps. And what you're actually looking at here, guys, I think is 5 different maps all at once. It's really impressively done. Combination of Photoshop skills and Tyria 3D, as far as I understand. You've got Divinity's Reach, and that is the real Divinity's Reach map in the middle there. You've got Queensdale to the south of it, but then over there on the right, that's actually Harathi Hinterlands. And below Harathi Hinterlands, that's Gendaran Fields. You're seeing elements from all of those maps. And then beyond that, you even have the unreleased map to the north of it, Lake Doric. I mentioned in a recent video the town of Loamhurst, a place that existed in Guild Wars 1, hasn't been seen in Guild Wars 2 just yet, and I said it was in the unreleased map Lake Doric and threw an image up in a recent video. Well, where I threw that image up wasn't actually exactly where Loamhurst was, and I think that confused a lot of people. I had quite a few comments about it. So just to be clear here, to pick that up, on this stitched map, you can see Loamhurst in Lake Doric, not to the right, which is where the screenshot I stupidly had was, but to the left, to the west, as you can see here. That is Loamhurst. And that is sort of in place with where it should be as 250 years moves forward between the 2 games. So that's what I was talking about. What an incredible little bit of art there. And then the other thing that came from Shaman, probably the cooler thing to most of us, is actually an ore translator. So thanks to the efforts of Matthew Medina, who is increasingly becoming one of my favorite developers, by the way, seems to have in his free time started writing like little bestiary entries for Karka and different creatures like that, which is excellent. And you guys will remember my little fan project to make my own bestiary. Well, he strikes again very recently by releasing some official, I guess because they come from him, fonts of various in-game languages for Guild Wars, including the full set for New Kryta and Orion. Okay, so Orion's really interesting because what it does is it combines individual letters together as symbols of their own for Orion. So like if you have TH is a totally different thing for Orion. So it can be quite hard to just translate like a cipher, our alphabet directly into Orion. It's a bit harder than say New Kryta. Well, that shaman made a little tool here, which means whatever you type in the top, it will naturally do the configuration for you and pop out Orion underneath. And the best thing about all of this, not just for the fans who want to type in Orion to each other in code and stuff, the best thing about this was Matthew then even responded to that and said, hey, one day I might even be able to, if we end up going back to Ore, and this is not a confirmation they're going to Ore, he said, if we go back to Ore someday, I'll try to remember to give the map artist this thing so we can get a lot more awesome Ore-based symbols in that, you know, whatever that new map or whatever might be. How excellent is that? Brilliant stuff all around. There you go, guys. There's a little bit of news. I'm going to get to work on a huge amount of videos that should be releasing tomorrow with the new patch. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I guess I will see you very soon. Have a great evening all. I'll catch you next time. By frame, and we're going to see exactly what is here, because there are a couple of surprising little moments. So let's do it.
I have been reborn.
He absorbed the Bloodstone's power